In the evolving landscape of American politics, the Democratic Party finds itself at a critical juncture, grappling with internal divisions and the resurgence of populist rhetoric. As tensions rise and frustrations mount, a familiar voice has emerged as a beacon for disillusioned Democrats: Senator Bernie Sanders. Alongside him, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is rapidly gaining traction as a youthful embodiment of progressive ideals, drawing thousands to their joint appearances on the Fighting Oligarchy tour. On March 20, 2025, Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez captivated a crowd of over 15,000 in Tempe, Arizona, with a rallying cry against the encroaching influence of wealth in politics. "We are here together because an extreme concentration of power and corruption is taking over this country like never before," Ocasio-Cortez declared, channeling the palpable anger among attendees. Their tour comes at a time when many Democrats feel the party's leadership is failing to effectively counteract the aggressive policies of the Trump administration. The urgency expressed by both politicians resonates deeply with a base yearning for a more combative approach to governance. As Democrats confront an uphill battle in the wake of recent electoral losses, Sanders' populist message continues to strike a chord. At a rally in Las Vegas, he warned, "This country faces enormous crises. How we respond to these crises today will impact our lives and the lives of future generations." With the Democratic Party's approval ratings plummeting to historical lows, the urgency for a clear and forceful message has never been more critical. Within the party, a growing dissatisfaction with traditional leadership has surfaced. Following Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's controversial vote on a Republican spending bill that many Democrats opposed, calls for a new direction intensified. "I'm very disappointed in Democrats," lamented Antonio Salas Jr., a rally attendee in Las Vegas. "This sentiment reflects a broader trend among Democratic voters who are increasingly reluctant to compromise with Republicans." A recent NBC News poll revealed that 65% of Democrats now prefer a more combative stance rather than seeking bipartisan cooperation, a stark shift from previous years. As Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez tour swing districts and engage with constituents, they represent not just a return to populist principles but also a potential pathway for new leadership within the party. Their collaboration suggests a mentorship dynamic, with Sanders paving the way for younger progressive figures like Ocasio-Cortez, who is seen by some as a future leader of the Democratic Party. "He's kind of a St. John the Baptist of this thing," remarked Democratic consultant Tad Devine, highlighting Sanders' role in galvanizing the base for a new generation of leaders. Meanwhile, in Florida, Democrats are making significant financial strides in preparation for upcoming special elections in historically Republican districts. Candidates Gay Vallimont and Josh Wall have raised an impressive combined total of $15.7 million in just 2 months, demonstrating that grassroots support remains robust despite the political landscape. However, the candidates face daunting odds in districts where Trump won by significant margins in the last election. The fundraising success underscores a persistent energy among Democratic donors driven by small-dollar contributions as they attempt to reclaim territory in a state that has leaned heavily Republican. As the Democratic Party navigates these turbulent waters, the juxtaposition of Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez grassroots activism with the traditional strategies of established leaders like Schumer exemplifies the ongoing struggle for the party's identity. The echoes of past movements like the Tea Party's rise within the Republican ranks loom large as Democrats seek to harness a similar fervor among their base. With the 2026 midterms on the horizon and Trump's administration poised to push aggressive agendas, the Democratic Party will need to unify under a message that resonates with voters or risk further fragmentation. In conclusion, the upcoming months will prove pivotal as the Democratic Party attempts to reconcile its divergent factions and respond to the challenges posed by the current administration. The dynamic between Sanders, Ocasio-Cortez, and emerging candidates like Vallimont and Wall may well shape the future of the party, as they strive to reclaim the narrative and re-engage disenchanted voters. As political landscapes evolve, the question remains: will the Democrats emerge as a unified force, or will the internal rifts define their path forward? In a stark display of the complexities of contemporary American foreign policy, President Donald Trump's recent military actions against the Houthi armed group in Yemen have not only triggered a wave of international scrutiny but have also unveiled deep divisions within his Republican base. This discord, highlighted by contrasting views on U.S. military intervention, poses significant implications for the future of Trump's political influence and the Republican Party's foreign policy direction. On March 21, Trump initiated a series of large-scale airstrikes against the Houthis, reportedly killing at least 53 individuals. This aggressive military response was spurred by the Houthis' renewed threats to target Israeli shipping in the Red Sea, a situation that Trump characterized as a direct challenge to U.S. interests. Tremendous damage has been inflicted upon the Houthi barbarians, he proclaimed in a social media post, vowing their complete annihilation. However, this assertive stance has created a rift among Trump's supporters. While a faction within the Republican Party advocates for a robust foreign policy that embraces military action, a growing contingent, particularly among far-right voters, calls for a withdrawal from foreign entanglements. Prominent figures like Steve Bannon have openly criticized the strikes, asserting that America has zero obligation to keep open the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, a sentiment echoed by others who question the strategic value of U.S. involvement in conflicts that do not serve direct national interests. Kurt Mills, director of the American Conservative magazine, emphasized the disconnect between Trump's military actions and the anti-interventionist rhetoric that helped fuel his 2016 campaign. The strikes on the Houthis are meant to prompt a response that could justify attacking Iran, which is discordant with the anti-interventionist message Trump won with in November, he explained. This sentiment reflects a broader skepticism among younger voters and those weary of prolonged military conflicts, particularly in the wake of the protracted wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Biden administration's previous engagements in Yemen have also come under fire, with critics labeling past responses as ineffective. Trump's allies, including National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, have framed the current military actions as a necessary show of strength, contrasting them with what they describe as the feckless responses of his predecessor. Yet this perspective is not universally accepted, as some Republicans caution against deeper involvement in a conflict that they argue does not align with fundamental U.S. interests. Figures like Congressman Thomas Massie have articulated their concerns, warning that the military focus on protecting shipping lanes does not resonate with the American public's desire to prioritize domestic issues. Here's the problem: it's not about pirates or protecting China's shipping lane to Europe, he asserted, highlighting the disconnect between military objectives and public sentiment. As the Republican Party grapples with these internal divisions, the implications for Trump's leadership remain uncertain. While he has successfully positioned himself as a defender of U.S. interests abroad, his actions could alienate a significant portion of his support base that favors non-interventionist principles. The ongoing debate over U.S. military engagement in the Middle East, particularly regarding Israel and Iran, continues to complicate the political landscape. As the situation evolves, it remains to be seen how these tensions will influence not only the Republican Party's stance on foreign policy but also the broader narrative of Trump's leadership as he seeks to navigate a path that reconciles the divergent views within his coalition. The coming months will be crucial in determining whether Trump's military strategy can unify his base or if it will further fracture the party as it heads into future electoral contests. In a recent turn of events that raises significant concerns about federal record-keeping practices, U.S. Senators Jeanne Shaheen, Democrat, New Hampshire, and Gary Peters, Democrat, Michigan, have demanded answers regarding the destruction of documents by the U.S. Agency for International Development (USAID). This inquiry comes after a directive was issued on March 11 instructing staff to shred and burn certain classified documents, prompting questions about compliance with the Federal Records Act (FRA), which mandates the preservation of government records. Senators Shaheen and Peters, both prominent figures on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, have expressed serious apprehensions about the legality of the shredding and burning directive. They argue that the email correspondence associated with this directive failed to distinguish between different categories of federal records and did not reference any approved records schedules. While not all federal records are required to be preserved permanently, the FRA requires that records only be disposed of in accordance with an approved records schedule, the senators noted in their letter to acting USAID Administrator Marco Rubio. The controversy intensified following a Department of Justice court filing in which attorneys claimed the disposals did not violate the FRA because they pertained to copies of documents from other agencies or derivatively classified materials. However, Senators Shaheen and Peters contended that this explanation was insufficient, emphasizing that the determination for record destruction hinges on the historical or research value of the documents, not merely their status as duplicates held by other agencies. The senators have formally requested that Rubio provide comprehensive records related to the directive, including any communications with the National Archives and Records Administration (NARA) and information on the status of USAID personnel records. They underscored the potential consequences of unauthorized destruction of federal records, which could include penalties such as fines, imprisonment, and loss of governmental office. A response from USAID is expected by March 28, 2025. This development raises broader questions about the integrity of federal record keeping and the potential implications for transparency within government agencies. As the scrutiny over USAID's actions continues, it remains to be seen how this situation will unfold and whether it will prompt further legislative or regulatory responses. In a separate but equally noteworthy event, U.S. Senator Steve Daines, Republican Montana, a staunch supporter of President Trump, is making headlines during his visit to Beijing amid escalating trade tensions between the U.S. and China. Daines' visit comes at a critical juncture as both nations have exchanged tariff threats and pointed fingers regarding the illegal trade in fentanyl, a potent opioid linked to a significant number of overdose deaths in the United States. During his discussions with senior Chinese officials, including Vice Foreign Minister Ma Jiaxu, Daines has emphasized the urgent need to address fentanyl production and distribution while also advocating for fair trade practices that benefit American farmers and producers. Daines, who has previous experience working in China, is the first member of Congress to visit Beijing since Trump took office, underscoring the importance of high-level dialogue amid rising tensions. As Daines navigates these complex diplomatic waters, the backdrop of U.S.-China relations continues to evolve, with recent actions including a 20% tariff imposed by the U.S. on Chinese goods and retaliatory measures from China affecting U.S. agricultural exports. The stakes are high as both countries grapple with not only trade disputes but also intertwined concerns surrounding public health and safety. As these two significant stories unfold, they highlight the intricate dynamics of U.S. governance and international relations. The resolution of the USAID document destruction issue could set important precedents for federal record-keeping practices, while Daines' visit to China may pave the way for critical conversations that could reshape trade relations. Looking ahead, stakeholders and observers alike will be keenly watching how these developments impact both domestic policies and international partnerships. In a bold move to enhance governmental transparency amid rising concerns about corruption, committee Democrats have unveiled a memo titled "Exposing Doge's Dark Dealings." Released in conjunction with Sunshine Week, the initiative aims to shine a light on the operations of Doge, a controversial venture under the purview of tech mogul Elon Musk, now linked to the Trump administration. This memo underscores a growing outcry from lawmakers about the perceived lack of accountability associated with Musk's management of Doge, which has reportedly delved into sensitive data and government funds without appropriate oversight. Representative Gerald E. Connolly, the ranking member of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, was vocal about the implications of Musk's influence, stating despite promising that Doge would be maximally transparent, Elon Musk is running Doge from the shadows, creeping through Americans' most sensitive data, compromising our security, and refusing basic oversight requests. Connolly's remarks encapsulate the urgency felt by many Democrats as they confront what they describe as a systemic issue of corruption, calling Doge compromised by corruption and asserting that it is illegally gutting government. The memo reveals that oversight Democrats have initiated over 150 investigations and inquiries into Doge's operations, with more than 1,000 requests for information directed at various stakeholders, including the Trump administration and Musk himself. Furthermore, they have called for public hearings and have suggested subpoenaing Musk to testify, demonstrating a commitment to holding those in power accountable. As Connolly emphasized, sunlight remains the best disinfectant, indicating a steadfast resolve to bring Doge's activities into the public eye. This heightened scrutiny of Doge comes at a time when concerns about governmental transparency are particularly salient. Recent reports indicate that the Trump administration has undermined the Freedom of Information Act (FOIA), further complicating efforts to attain clarity around governmental dealings. The implications of these actions are far-reaching. They not only threaten the foundational principles of democratic governance but also raise alarms about the integrity of sensitive data handling in an era increasingly defined by digital privacy concerns. While the investigation into Doge is underway, the political landscape is not stagnant. In the face of these developments, a special congressional election is also heating up in Florida's District 6, where early voting is set to begin. The election features a contest between Democrat Josh Weil and Republican Randy Fine, the latter endorsed by former President Trump. This race is emblematic of the broader national political climate, showcasing stark contrasts in policy and ideology. Weil has positioned himself as a progressive alternative focusing on issues like healthcare access and economic justice, while Fine has embraced a hardline Trumpist agenda. The juxtaposition of these two narratives, one focused on reform and transparency in the face of corruption and the other centering on the contentious political battles within Congress, illustrates a pivotal moment in American politics. As Democrats push for accountability regarding Doge and its operations, the outcome of the Florida congressional race could serve as a barometer for the political mood of the electorate. With early voting commencing and the primary election on the horizon, the stakes could not be higher for both parties. As the investigations into Doge progress and the special election unfolds, observers will be keenly watching how these developments intersect. The outcomes could redefine not only local political dynamics but also the broader discourse surrounding governance, accountability, and the role of technology in public life. With significant implications for both the future of legislative oversight and the upcoming electoral battles, the next few weeks promise to be crucial in shaping the political landscape. In a significant turn of events within the American judicial landscape, Chief Justice John Roberts has found himself at the center of a storm surrounding the integrity and role of the Supreme Court. His recent comments and decisions have sparked intense debate about the judiciary's function and its relationship with political discourse, particularly in the wake of polarizing figures like former President Donald Trump. Roberts, who famously likened judges to umpires in a 2005 Senate confirmation hearing, has faced criticism for what some perceive as a departure from that impartiality. His recent critique of Trump's suggestion to impeach Judge James Boasberg, a federal judge who ruled that deportation flights associated with a Venezuelan gang must be halted, has ignited discussions about the boundaries of judicial authority and the implications of political commentary from the nation's highest court. Historically, impeachment has been a mechanism for holding judges accountable for misconduct, a principle dating back to the early 1800s during Thomas Jefferson's presidency. However, Roberts' assertion that Trump's calls for impeachment threaten judicial integrity raises questions about what constitutes appropriate judicial conduct in politically charged times. Roberts' remarks echo a broader concern regarding the perceived politicization of the courts, an issue that has only intensified in recent years, adding fuel to the fire. Legal experts have noted that Roberts' track record reflects a tendency to navigate controversial cases with a dual focus on institutional integrity and public perception. This was evident in his handling of the 2012 Obamacare case NFIB versus Sebelius, where he controversially upheld the individual mandate by reinterpreting it as a tax despite initial inclinations to oppose it. Critics argue that this approach undermines the judiciary's role as a neutral arbiter, instead positioning the court as a political entity seeking to appease both conservative and liberal factions. The tension reached a crescendo with the Supreme Court's recent unanimous ruling in the case of Patrick Daley Thompson, a former Chicago alderman convicted of making false statements to bank regulators. The court overturned a lower court's decision asserting that the federal statute under which Thompson was convicted strictly applies to false statements, not misleading ones. This ruling not only reflects the court's ongoing struggle with the definitions and implications of legal language but also highlights Roberts' nuanced approach to judicial interpretation, one that balances legal precision with the potential for broader implications on federal criminal law. As Roberts navigates these turbulent waters, he faces the dual challenge of upholding the integrity of the judiciary while also reflecting the realities of a deeply polarized political environment. Legal scholars and practitioners alike are left pondering whether the court can reclaim its image as an impartial arbiter of justice or if it will continue to be embroiled in the political fray. Looking ahead, the implications of these developments are profound. The court's ability to maintain its legitimacy in the eyes of the public may hinge on how it addresses the intersection of law and politics moving forward. As the judiciary grapples with these challenges, it remains to be seen whether Roberts can steer the Supreme Court back towards a path of perceived impartiality or if the ongoing political climate will further entrench it in the contentious arena of partisan debate. The unfolding narrative will undoubtedly shape the future of American jurisprudence for years to come.